This portion of the news brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
A cutlass with some suggestive labels and an alleged confession by murder-accused Prince Hepburn were among the pieces of evidence presented to a jury today, nearly 2 years after Nellie Brown was found dead in a home in South Beach.
Now, the trial opened today before Justice Indira Charles. Tonight, Fern Carey tells us what the two police officers who testified today recalled from that graphic scene.
In their opening statements, prosecutors alleged that contractor Prince Hepburn brutally murdered 42-year-old Nellie Mae Brown because he suspected she was cheating on him and wanted to get revenge. Hepburn is also accused of ambushing the victim at her apartment, killing her, and then confessing later that he committed the crime. Among those testifying for the prosecution Monday was Sergeant Kevin Jones, who told jurors he met a bloody scene when he arrived at Hepburn's Bougainvillea Boulevard, South Beach apartment back on April 7th of 2011. Sergeant Jones described that Brown's lifeless body was lying on the kitchen floor with multiple stab wounds to the face and hands, and her right hand was completely severed. There was also a pool of blood on the floor and blood splattered throughout the kitchen, bathroom, and in the bedroom where there was a quilt with suspected blood. The officer confirmed that he took photos of a note with the words, "You next, George," and a brown-handled cutlass with the words, "No cheaters and liars," inscribed on it. Superintendent Theophilus Cunningham also informed jurors that after discovering Brown's lifeless body in the rear of the triplex, he heard groaning coming from inside, prompting him to ask if there was anyone inside. Cunningham said a man responded, whom he then asked to come outside. Seconds later, Cunningham said a man came out and said, quote, "I spent over $1 million on this woman. I left my wife for her, and she schemed on me. I couldn't live with that. I had to kill her," end quote. At the same time, Superintendent Cunningham revealed that he noticed Hepburn had cuts on his hands and neck, and there was white foam coming out of his mouth. The trial continues Tuesday before Supreme Court Justice Indira Charles. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
A new training agency is one of the latest initiatives in the government's push to improve employment numbers. Today, Labor and National Insurance Minister Shane Gibson also told Parliament how national insurance contributions compare to sickness benefit payouts last year. Our Carla Palmer has more.
By decentralizing the public employment service and bringing it closer to the people is one way the government is hoping to stimulate the economy and address unemployment in the country. Minister of Labour, the Public Service and National Insurance, the Honourable Shane Gibson, says the decentralization effort involves establishing additional public employment centres throughout the country.
It is envisioned that, in addition to Robertson Road, other centres will be placed in Carmichael and the Foxhill area.
It is envisioned that the Public Employment Service will serve as a strategic partner to the National Training Agency, which comes on stream in June this year.
This interagency, Mr. Speaker, collaboration will allow individuals to enhance and upgrade their skills, thus increasing their chances to obtain work compatible with their training. I have doubled my ministry's efforts to ensure that the skills data bank of the Department of Labor is fully utilized. Only in the extreme of circumstances are labor certificates granted to facilitate the employment of foreign workers.
Minister Gibson also announced the relocation of the One-Stop Service Centre due to space from the Clarence Abin building to the Department of Labour, which gives residents access to computers. To better resolve disputes between employers and employees, Minister Gibson feels that new and enforced legislation is the key.
We had a case already with the Bahamas Financial Service Union, and I think it was First Caribbean Bank, where it was ruled in court that it was illegal and not right for employers to force employees to sign deeds of release for monies that they're entitled to.
On the national insurance front, Minister Gibson says last year, NIB paid out $198 million compared to $183 million in 2011. The bulk of the increases, he says, came in the sickness and unemployment benefits categories.
In July, as you know, all civil servants will begin to pay, Mr. Speaker, their contributions based on their actual salary. Where up until now, all civil servants, they pay contributions based on the minimum wage, which is really reflected also in the amount of pension that they could collect at the end of the day.
Minister Gibson says while benefit expenditure increased last year, contributors fell short of budget by some $6 million, due in part to the slow economy.
Compliance continues to be a challenge for the Social Security program, and while Almost 2/3 of registered businesses make at least one payment during the course of the year. This is important, Mr. Speaker. Only approximately 25% of this number makes contributions payments on time.
I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
Well, the search for a missing teen girl has just been on for about a week now. Alanique Mortimer of White Subdivision was last seen on Saturday, March 9th at her residence off Kemp Road. She's described as having a dark brown complexion, is of slim build and stands 5 feet tall. Anyone with information on her whereabouts is asked to contact police. Well, still to come, the Bahamas Carifta team is named. We've got the full breakdown coming up.
And Family Islanders get their say on constitutional reform. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news was brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
This is your Royal Fidelity Business News. I'm Jimenita Swain. The answer is no. That's the word from the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union to the idea of contributing to their pension and medical insurance funds. BC Chairman Leslie Miller announced last week that workers would have to pay 25% towards their pensions and in 3 years up to half. But the union is saying they may consider that for new hires, but for current employees, their answer is no. BC is looking to reduce overhead and eyes the pension and medical perks as an area of reform. BC currently spends over $16 million annually on employee pension and medical plans. Building permit fees may be going up soon. In his budget address, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Works Philip Davis said that income from building permit fees were significantly down, and with no change to the fee structure for the last 25 years, changes could be on the way. Noting that the services performed far outpaced the current cost for building permits, Minister Davis said permit fees throughout the country were more than half of what they are in Grand Bahama for the same size project. An increase in fees and the addition of more inspectors are key priorities for the department in this year's budget. And finally, customers in the tiny Mediterranean island nation of Cyprus are up in arms over a controversial decision by the Eurozone to bail in customers in that country's banking crisis. The plan essentially calls for customers with bank accounts with less than 100,000 euros or 129,339 US dollars to pay a 6% tax on their deposits. With this weekend being a holiday in that nation, Cypriots went to the ATM only to find their bank accounts a little lower than it ought to be, as the taxes had been deducted automatically. Cyprus is the latest nation in that region to run into a banking crisis as the Eurozone seeks to avoid another crash that could destabilize the global economy. That was your Royal Fidelity Business News. I'm Jimenita Swain.